Good morning. Am I on? Oh, okay. Oh, there, I hear myself now. How are you this morning? Woo, I'm so glad to be here. Now I'm hearing an echo. Woo. I am Dr. Sharon Hudson. I am the new senior interim minister here. Thank you. I've met many of you already. I'm just here because we're in this time of change, and I'm like a change master, not really. I just made that up, and I like it. It's good. I think I'm going to start to declare I'm a change master. But I know things here are amazing. We have a great foundation, amazing people in leadership, and I'm just delighted to be here working with everyone. And right now, I'd like you to join me, if you wish, to take a deep breath, and let's get centered in spirit. So relax. Get comfortable. In this quiet place, I open my heart and mind to the divine, to that infinite presence, which is love, pure, unbounded love, connecting, revealing truth, lighting up the world. This beloved presence is also deep, grounding peace, and I ground myself in this peace right now. So good to know, and to be a unique expression of this one. I am the love, the peace, the joy, the wisdom of the divine right here, uniquely expressing, as is each person in this room. And so today I just know that as our service unfolds, we're lifted up to a higher truth. We are awakened to our spiritual magnificence, to the power that is at hand, to the love that is our true nature. I celebrate our time together. I rejoice in this opportunity to see more clearly through the eyes of love. So I let go. I release this word, this time of knowing the truth, accepting that it's already done. It is great. And will you join me as we affirm this by saying, and so it is. So happy day. Thank you for being here. We do come together because we know there's a power for good in the universe. Life itself. I like to call God. We have many names in Science of Mind for God, don't we? I like to call it the dynamic, creative activity of the universe. And so thank you for being here as we awaken to our own spiritual magnificence and create a world that works for all. So I've only been here 1 week, in case you don't already know that. And in that 1 week, I have met with the staff, the practitioners, the ministers, the board, and believe it or not, the men's group. It was really great. They actually invited me. 3 men invited me to the men's group. This is like a community I've never been in before. It's awesome. And they're an amazing group, as all those groups are, doing wonderful things for our spiritual community. It's just been a joy and a pleasure. You'll be hearing more from Paresh, who will be doing announcements in just a moment about things that are happening. But what we've already established is that in May, we'll be having a town hall meeting so we can ask questions, get an update from the board and myself and our executive director, Reverend Valerie. And we're also going to have some listening circles. You'll be hearing more about that. I'd like to introduce Paresh Shah for our announcements, our board member.
How's everyone doing? Wonderful. Hey, the hall's filling up. It's wonderful. Wonderful to see you all. So yes, thank you, Dr. Sharon. And these town hall meetings will be May 10th and 24th in person at 11:45. May 10th and May 24th at 11:45 in person here, and those will be Wednesdays. And then on Thursday, May 16th and May 30th, there will be Zoom town hall meetings as well. So spread the word and feel free to come by, share, get to know Dr. Sharon, and share what's going on and what your thoughts are on the center as we move forward. So, I heard an interesting story today. There was this nursery student, and she was feverishly drawing a picture. And the teacher came up and said, "What are you doing, honey?" "I'm drawing a picture of God." And then the teacher looked down and she goes, "Okay. Well, what colors are you using?" "All of the colors." "Pass me a blue crayon, please." And then the teacher was smiling, and she said, "Honey, no one really knows what God looks like." And then the young girl looked up and said, "Well, if you'll stop interrupting me, I'll show you in a few minutes." So our speaker today will be Reverend Katherine McKinney, and our singer is our lovely Reverend Mary Morgan. Yay! Yay! Thank you, Reverend Mary. So we have our drumming circle today, and come on by. It's at 12:30 in Richelieu Hall, and they always have a great time. So come by, even if you've never done drumming, just come in and lend a hand or two. And next week, Dana's going to continue her chair and standing yoga class until May 1. So please check the flyer for more information about the chair and standing yoga. Anyone can participate. It's really gentle and super powerful. Every Tuesday at 10 a.m., Reverend Kathy's in-person book reading continues, and the book is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. So feel free to join and come by there. Even if you've not been part of it so far, just jump in and get a feel for what that group is like, so that you can jump in on the next book. 11 on Tuesdays is another yoga class. Bring your mat. The cost is $10. On Wednesdays at 9:45 on Zoom, our book reading titled Learn to Live by Irvin Seal continues. And you can just email the office and they will send you the Zoom link. So that is Wednesdays, 9:45. All of this is in your brochure and often projected up there during the service as well. By the way, thanks everyone who's joining us at home. I know we've got folks from all over the world, actually, who join us. Let's see, on Thursday, so we have the men's group meeting on May 1st at 7 p.m. in the foyer. So those of you who have not participated in that, come on by. And Dr. Sharon got to join and be part of the group. Thursday, May 4th, we have our spiritual discussion group. Thursday, May 4th, along with the Labyrinth Walk. How many of you have been on the Labyrinth Walk before? Great, you found your way out of the labyrinth back to the center. That's great. On May 7th, our teens are having their fundraiser, so please come support our teens. Some of the teens have gone on to do amazing things, become practitioners and things like that. And so that will be May 7th, and it will be tie-dye. So you can, bring your hippie selves to the fundraiser and come out with some sort of tie-dye products and T-shirts and stuff. May 13th, Reverend Valerie is going to do a forgiveness workshop. That's May 13th, and that will be from 9 to 11, and that will just be a love offering if you'd like to offer. So that will be May 13th. Mark your calendar for forgiveness workshop. Okay, every Sunday before this service, we have our Science of Mind Sunday class. That's from 10:15 to 10:45, and you get a taste of Dr. Ernest Holmes. They take a little snippet of the teachings and really, digest them, chew on them, and it's super powerful. You can always purchase CDs of the service at the desk at 12:15, or just tap in on YouTube. And again, we want to thank all of our wonderful volunteers. We had our Earth Day here last weekend. We had amazing volunteers. The event went off great. The event coordinators were super happy with the center and all of the volunteers that gave of their time. And let's see what else we have. After service today, those of you who did volunteer, come on out in the foyer, and we'd love to just get some feedback from you on what worked well, what we can double down on for any other events we have, and where there might be room for improvement. So I think that is all of our messages. Hope you guys have a wonderful service today. And now we'd love to welcome our singer, Reverend, I promoted you to doctor, Reverend Mary Morgan.
Thank you, Paresh. And before I begin, I'd like to introduce our musician for today, David Joyce. So let's welcome him. Thank you.
Rolling river God, little stones are smooth, but only once the water passes through. And so I am a stone, rough and grainy still, trying to reconcile this river's chill. But when I close my eyes and feel you passing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when I see your light, and it will be this prayer, that when you pick me up, you'll notice that I am just a little smoother in your hand. Sometimes raging wild, sometimes swollen high, but never have I known this river dry. The deepest part of you is where I want to stay, until the roughest edges wash away. And when I close my eyes and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when I feel your light, I will have just one prayer, that when you pick me up, you notice that I am just a little smoother in your hand. Rolling river God, little stones are smooth, only till the water passes through.
And I'd like to welcome David Joyce, technical director and magnificent pianist. Someone must have told him that I'm not terribly techie. So, first of all, Mary, don't do that before I have to speak. I love that lady. And thank you, David Joyce, for helping us out today. So, Reverend Catherine's topic is in a bubble. And I'm really looking forward to what she has to say, because I have no idea. But I just want to know if any of you have been the recipient of the words, "I hate to burst your bubble, but..." It usually means that you're not facing the other person's idea of what reality should be for you, and that with a little verbal and somewhat patronizing pat on the head, they then proceed to tell you what's wrong. So I was at a party recently in Houston, Texas, celebrating a significant birthday of a dear, dear friend, and she adores bubbles. And so they were blown with great joy, particularly with her grandchildren, and added so much to the evening because it was such a fun part of it. So clearly the message of living in a bubble can be positive or negative, and it depends on how we view it. It can be living in a bubble is weak to some people. Other people live in a bubble of creativity and solace. And so bubbles are lovely. So if you're enjoying your bubble, they're comfortable and they're safe, but they can also be isolating and cutting you off from your connection to the larger community. And what's really apparent to me is that we can be hiding in a bubble thinking we're protecting ourselves from outsiders. And quite honestly, they can see straight through the bubble, and they probably know us better than we know ourselves, because they're not hiding anything. In the book discussion group, we've been plowing through The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Not fast enough for some, a bit too long for others, but we're doing it, we're doing the work. And the essence of the book is talking about freeing yourself from the pain and the protection that we've given past hurts, and just enjoying ourselves as untethered souls, the joy of freedom. And we can choose today to open ourselves to what Ernest Holmes calls the divine influx, the continuous inpouring of God's blessings. And sometimes we reject that because we feel we're not quite ready for it, or we're not good enough, or we're going to do it later, or when we, blah, blah, blah. Today's the day, folks. Break out of your bubble. So I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but the future's not safe. It doesn't matter how well you think you're protected. And if you find yourself sticking to what you know, avoiding anything that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, then you may well be in a bubble. So step out of your comfort zone every so often. Grow, stretch, find joy in the newness of stuff. I discovered that I felt very comfortable with my life, and I realized that I wasn't growing. It takes courage. It hurts. And I read a quote that says, "To share your weakness is to make yourself vulnerable. To make yourself vulnerable is to show your strength." And we all have that strength. So don't hide in a corner, and don't sit there thinking this doesn't mean you. It absolutely does. Have faith in yourself. And know right this minute, you are truly enough to claim your greatness, to claim your gifts. Brene Brown writes in The Gift of Imperfection, "Owning our story can be hard, but it's not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but it's not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love, belonging, and joy. Those experiences that make us most vulnerable. Only when we're brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light." Now, just as a really cheap ad, that's going to be the next book we do in the group discussion group. So if you like that, please come and join us. I think we'll be there soon. So you have the responsibility of making sure you receive all the gifts that this life has to offer. And as you peer through that veneer of your bubble, just think about bursting it. We talk about things in our lives coming along, we say, and this too shall pass. Well, I think this week it'd be, and my bubble will pop. And you can make that your theme. Say yes to life and feel true freedom. Take advantage of all the stuff we've got here. It's fantastic. So declare with me, I'm embracing all that I am and all that I'm becoming. And I choose authenticity over perfection. Nearly got it right. So let's prayerfully introduce our hearts and our minds to today's talk as we sing with Reverend Mary. Oh, and my techie advisor. Thank you.
Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Be careful what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes our prayer. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Our thoughts are prayers. Take charge of what you're saying. Seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. And every thought becomes our prayer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad so many of you are here, and those of you who are joining us from all over the country, actually, on our YouTube. Welcome, welcome. In a bubble. It never occurred to me as I was putting together the topic title that this would be such a conundrum. I absolutely loved what Reverend Kathy had to say about that, and it stimulated me in really, really wonderful ways. The truth is, one of my recurring words, themes, and thoughts is the idea that we are all unique expressions of the universal power, as Ernest Holmes puts it, all of us. And what also is something that I think about and speak about are the consequences of the fact that each of us is unique. Because of the challenge in my case, in your case, in all of our cases, in recognizing that the person in front of me is a unique expression of God as I am. So it makes me wonder, or at least consider, going back in the beginnings of when humans were on this earth and moving around 10, 12,000 years ago, either because of our uniqueness or maybe in spite of it, people did come together. They were a nomadic people, the ones that I'm thinking about, and we only know about them through anthropologists' studies, as well as archaeologists' digs, and looking at the evidence that they've left for us. So we know that they were nomadic. We also know that there were groups of people who got together. And we assume that it was for safety. They had safety in larger numbers. We also think that it was for cooperation, a division of labor, if you will. But they had to keep moving. We also know that. But they did so within their little tribe or their group They may have looked like each other, they may not have. We don't necessarily know. But they were together and they depended on each other and developed some level of trust. So then if we fast forward, these smaller groups eventually find ways to settle down because agriculture develops, and they get in larger groups. Family groups form, and they tend to be together. And so ultimately, things like tribes did come together, and people were a part of this group. That was, say, the bubble that they were a part of. By the Jesus time, which is, 10, 11,000 years later, there were very well-established groups. Jesus was a part of one. He was Jewish. He was settled with Jewish people of a particular tribe, and they had certain ways. And because of that, the stories that Jesus told were very particular to that time. And he fashioned different stories based on what he saw. See, and Jesus, by that point in his life, had achieved an understanding of human nature, of the way we are to be in the world, that was something that was to be shared. And that is what he attempted to do. And the one thing that Jesus didn't do was tell people, don't do that, and don't do the other thing. But he told stories. And so when we think about stepping outside of our bubble, the parable that comes to my mind is the Good Samaritan. And so Jesus was asked by a lawyer, he was asked, what would you say we need to do to achieve eternal life? And Jesus said, to love your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might, and your neighbor as yourself. And so the lawyer says, yes, but who is my neighbor? And so Jesus responded with the Good Samaritan. And so what he says is, there was a man who was traveling on the road between Jericho and Jerusalem, and he was set upon by thieves who stripped him of all his clothes, took all of his goods, and left him wounded in the ditch. It so happened that later a priest came by, and he spied the man but went to the other side of the road and hurried on his way. And later a Levite went by. Now, a Levite at that time was the tribe of people who weren't priests, but they assisted in the worship services. The Levite, too, saw but went to the other side of the road. And then came a man from Samaria. Now, you have to understand, in this time, a Samaritan was definitely the other. Samaritans were people, historically, who had intermarried with Gentiles. And so the Jewish people of Judea, and this group that Jesus was part of, looked down on people who were less than. They were the other. But it was a Samaritan who came down the road. He saw the man. He gave him what first aid he could with what he had. He took him on his shoulder and carried him, or his donkey if he had one, carried him to the next inn. And he says to the innkeeper, this man is wounded. I'm giving you money to take care of him, get medical attention for him. And if you spend any more money, I will check in with you on my return and pay the difference. So Jesus says to the lawyer, to the wounded man, who was the neighbor? Which of these three was his neighbor? And the lawyer said, the man who showed him mercy. And Jesus said, yes, go and do likewise. And this was a powerful lesson to the people who were present. It means that your neighbor is outside of your bubble. not in your bubble, outside your bubble. And he's saying that that is where you need to attend to this idea of being the person that you want to be. You may be unique, but yet so is this wounded man, and so is the Good Samaritan. So in this particular story, we find the idea that Jesus does not tell people what not to do. He's giving them an example of how to lead the best life, a compassionate life, a kind life. And he's showing them how that is done. So I was reading really some years ago about a notion that I read in the newspaper, and I learned the term, it's at least 8 years ago, the term implicit bias. And implicit means hidden, and so we have beliefs that we don't know about, and we have these different things that we think are true that may not be true. Well, I read that, and I thought it was interesting, but I sort of set it aside because I didn't know any more about it at the time. Well, as so happened, I have a minister friend who creates curriculum at a different center, and he shared with me this curriculum that was really interesting, and it used a book that is by Malcolm Gladwell, which some of you may have heard, and it's called Blink. Well, in Blink, what it says on the front of it is how we think without thinking. How we think without thinking. How we're responding to something within ourselves that we are not necessarily know is there. Well, I really enjoyed reading this book, and I read about in the book that there was a place, it was at Harvard, and they make available a test that's called the Harvard Bias Test, and there's a website. And so I'm thinking, there's a test? And so I thought that was really cool, and I wanted to take that test, and I did. And I have taught this in classes that I've taught. Some of you who've been in my classes may remember, and I put the idea of doing that. How many people have done it, I have no idea. So we move forward in time, and I read, well, recently, actually in the last few weeks I have done this, but the magazine was written in 2018. It was an old Science of Mind magazine. And there was an article in there by a minister who is talking, and there came the title for this talk. She says, creating the bubble of our choosing is the way she put it. We are in the bubble of our choosing. And so she goes on to tell an example. Now, this is pre-pandemic, so this had happened. Whatever had happened in terms of this happened that many years ago. And so when I was reading this, it gave an example that she had heard on a Netflix interview. And the Netflix interview said the person was telling of an experiment. And the experiment took a person who was self-identified as a liberal, a person who was self-identified as a conservative, and someone who self-identified as a moderate. And they were both given the task to look up the same thing, and it was Egypt. So the liberal, when he checked into Egypt, he was shown images of Tahrir Square in Cairo. Well, it turns out that square is where protests are done, when people object to what the government is doing in Tahrir Square. The conservative was given all kinds of references to the Muslim Brotherhood, which you may have heard of. The moderate was given tourist sites to visit on the Nile. I thought that was really interesting. The internet is an interesting place. Now, I remember way back, and I lived in Atlanta, which is a long time ago. Computers I'm not going to say they weren't invented, but they weren't in common use. And I got the very unlikely job, they paid me money, to operate in a department in this larger organization I was a part of called word processing. That was the first time I had ever heard that word. Well, basically, I was a glorified typist, which is hilarious. I am one of the poorest skilled typists they could possibly have hired. And I say that without even any shame whatsoever. But they hired me, and I did it. But one of the things that I noticed, you typed on a regular typewriter, but they had it hooked up to a screen that showed your words. No computers, it's just a screen where you got to see it bigger. So I sat in my chair thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a way to correct this type before you actually printed it? What I didn't tell you about word processing in this place is it had to be perfect. No strikeovers, no little whiteouts. That was not allowed. It had to be perfect the first time. You started over. I started over a lot. But that's what put me to thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful? Well, somebody thought of that. I didn't come up with that idea. That was already in the one mind, and it wasn't that much longer before we have that. And then we have computers that connect with each other, and eventually we get the internet. And the internet allows us to connect with a lot of different things, and eventually we have social media sites that are allowing us to communicate. And it doesn't take long before the people who invented Facebook and other media things discover there's a lot more information in what we're sharing than just what pair of shoes you want to buy or places to go in Egypt. And so they start collecting this data, and so the data can get used. This is our bubble. And that example that was taken in 2017 or so is an example of that we are communicating all kinds of things about ourselves besides whether I want to get this size shoes. Now, we all know we get some of that stuff back. When I was buying for Angel Tree, all the toys that I looked up for all these children were appearing on my computer for weeks afterwards. I remember so many X-Men figures like this. I was getting them everywhere I looked. So they're keeping up with all of this stuff, whether I personally need it or not. But they're also collecting everything else. So this is the bubble that we're in, ladies and gentlemen. And our bubble is part of who we are. It's already known. It's not a matter of we have to prove that it's there. It is. So what do we do with that information? Well, it seems to me that we want to not only take the bubble that we're in, not pop it, and not go outside of it, but enlarge our bubble. There was a great thing that Dr. Frank used to quote. It was somebody else. He said that he quotes a poet who said, they drew a circle and included and left me out. And this person says, but I drew a bigger circle and included everyone in. And that's the kind of bubble I'm thinking. We don't have to stay in exactly the same bubble. I see these bubbles as very flexible. And then on top of that, I think that we are in bubbles of different kinds. I have my own unique, but I share my bubble with many others. And I can share it with even more as I open my own mind to how things can be. How they can be different. And so one of the things that Ernest Holmes tells us over and over again, recognition is the key. So as we recognize the kind of bubble that we have, we can recognize with the person in front of me, it matters how much other they may be or not be, that we are all one in this idea that we are together in the one creation as a unique expression of the universal God power. Jesus understood that and tried to teach that. And, well, he did teach it. He put it out there for us to absorb. He says many times with his parables, let him who has eyes to see, see. Let him who has ears to hear, hear. I have heard people in different places want to close their mind to something that is different. I don't want to know about that. I've had it in practitioner sessions when you ask questions about different things in their life. I don't want to know about that. We all have to be ready to learn at the level we are ready to level. Ernest Holmes was very clear in how to use science of mind. You need to have a principle, and you need to be true to that principle. But we can only understand at the level of which we are understanding the whole idea of the principle. And if we have to, we say this every day. We treat as long as it takes. We treat as many times as it takes until we realize that principle that we want to embody. Emma Curtis Hopkins says it a little bit differently because she believes in denying the truth, that the evidence that's in front of us, the appearances is what she calls it. But she believes that when you steadfastly face the one, the true, the only, that there is no sin, sickness, or death. Steadfastly facing thee, she says, there is no lack or limitation. Steadfastly facing thee. I know that there is a divine, there is a beautiful, there is a wonderful power, and I am of that power because I am one with that idea that I am unique, sharing this wonderful oneness with all the unique expressions of God that there are. And we know that, we trust that, and we live from it every day and grow in the understanding. And we can be more, we can lift ourselves higher, we can be all of those things if we know that's what we want. Ernest Holmes understood all of this. This may be a story of Ernest Holmes that you've heard before, but I will close with this. Back in the 40s, I think it was, the Science of Mind magazine published it. It's a different format from now, and it had a listing of all of the churches in the system were listed in the back. And the very first one, the one at the top, was an African-American church right here in the Los Angeles area. And for some reason, somebody in the publishing area decided to take that church and put it at the bottom. Ernest Holmes noticed it. He said not a word to anyone, but he booked himself into that center and spoke the next Sunday, and his topic was oneness. We are all one. He let his words and his deeds speak the principle that he believed in. And the next issue of that magazine, it was back in alpha order. Let him who has ears to hear and eyes to see, hear and see. And let us all know what we know and come from that truth within ourselves and know that we lift ourselves higher. I am so grateful to be in this place and to be in this teaching that has been so much for me, and I invite every one of you to come into that bubble too, in whatever way that you choose. And so I will just close and say, and so it is. So our ushers are coming in, And we have the opportunity to share with this wonderful organization from our own bounty. As we say, divine love consecrates my gift. It goes forth to heal, to bless, and to prosper all those who give and all those who receive. I rejoice in the sharing of my good, and I release my gift with love. And so it is, and so indeed it is. So I am, oh yes, we have the song, sorry.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.
And now Reverend Mary is going to come up with her second lovely song. Thank you, Reverend Mary.
And again, let's thank Mr. David Joyce, who's just an awesome musician and great energy. Thank you, David. Thank you. Okay, here we go.
When you feel like you're ready to go someplace you've never been, with a thought then a dream in you grows, shining as bright as the day, carrying you on your way. The story begins with the light in your heart, a vision, a dream, and a spark. Once you believe that you're ready to shine, the vision within you will show you are the glow. You are the glow. Look around, take in all that you see, and you just might be surprised. A world full of beauty and grand majesty you are discovering, the beauty that you've always known. The story begins with the light in your heart, a vision, a dream, and a spark. And once you believe that you're ready to shine, you know what you've known all along. You are the glow. Feel your strength. You can face the world every day. Anything is possible. A beautiful journey awaits. The story begins with a light in your heart, a vision, a dream, and a spark. Once you believe that you're ready to shine, the greatness within you will show that you are the glow. You are the glow. Yes, you are the glow.
Thank you. Thank you. You are the glow. You are the glow. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Reverend Mary Morgan, our singer for today and our congregational singer. Thank you. And David, welcome. We're so glad you were here today. It's a wonderful tinkling of the ivories. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I don't want to not mention those folks in the back who really do such a fantastic job of making this service what it is today. Thank you all. It's an important, the people that are on the other side of, outside of this bubble are definitely depend on our tech people, but so do we. It makes it wonderful for all of us. We have wonderful volunteers and hospitality at the desk. This church doesn't operate without volunteers, so thank you so very much for all that you're doing, and know that you're noticed and appreciated. So now we are about to send our blessing to the world, to this world, to that greater bubble that is, and also to ourselves as we say these words. I love the idea of taking these beautiful words and bringing them into our hearts and bringing them into the idea that we want to be and how we want to be in the world. So join me. I know divine life enfolds me. Divine light leads me. Divine life lives in me. Divine wisdom inspires me. Divine compassion expresses through me. And divine power protects me. All that I am is Spirit's life in expression. It is good and very good. With deep joy and generosity filling me, I go forward now in sacred service, supporting a compassionate world that works for all. I move through my days with grace and ease, in peace and love, in health and wellness, in fullness and plenty, and in loving relationship with all. What I now know for myself, in blessing and in deep gratitude, I know for all life. There is only God. There is only God. There is only God. So before we go to our peace song, I want to remind you that we have practitioners on duty. They'll come down, they'll stand right here on the floor. Come to them. If there's something that you would like to take in prayer to a practitioner, they are ready and they are willing to be there for you. So remember that, and remember it every Sunday. It is something to look forward to if you need a prayer. So we're going to rise and sing our peace song, and we send it out there knowing that it's wonderful.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our power, united all are we. Let us walk with each other